Hey everyone, welcome to the ninth episode of the MJL podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lee. Today I'm honored to talk about all things musical performances with nerd rapper, Twitch, and live stream performer, plus music performer, and a master at Yu-Gi-Oh! Card unboxing videos, Chris Songco. I want to welcome you to the pod.
Beer, 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 beer. Glad to be here, Mike.
Oh yeah, we got a couple of different effects here.
MJL podcast.
I might have to take that one and just, you run that as an intro at that point. You're adding, some extra sizzle to, the MGL podcast name and title and stuff like that.
Oh hell yeah, yeah, absolutely. Chop it up, sample it, do whatever you like.
That's how I know you're a performer and a musician at heart, right? Like everything that, we do, it has to be like a semi performance almost. Like it has to have a little entertainment. It's got to have a little flair to it. And you do a really good job of taking that musicality into a performance oriented approach to everything in everyday life.
Yeah, it definitely makes things funner. It makes things a little spicier, There's so much in our day to day that's very boring, mundane, like, taxes and dishes.
You finish your taxes yet?
Not yet, but I'm working with a person. Good reminder.
You got like another week or so. I mean, you can always file an extension, no problem.
Yeah. That might need to be what happens because there was a flood in my apartment recently, so, had to tend to that. And now that part's slowing down. So we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
I'm glad to hear that most of your stuff is what I hope is in relatively one piece. I do want to let our audience know how we met each other. We met each other through one of our mutual friends, Danny Fan, who was also on the pod as my first episode guest. She introduced us, I think, probably about, I want to say like 13, 12 years ago. And then we've kind of just been friends ever since. So kudos to Danny for making a wonderful introduction.
Oh yeah. No, Danny's amazing. She's always had that energy of bridging people and different communities together, yeah, I think it was probably like 2011 that we met. It might have been over Catan. It might have been over Settlers of Catan, or it might have just been over some good food. I can't remember.
I think it's when you were still working at the Apple Store, and I visited like your house with when you were living with a bunch of roommates. I think back in your San Bruno house. So I think it was back in those days.
Yeah, definitely 2011, 2012. Yeah, that was in the peninsula, and definitely a long time ago. Crazy, man. Very crazy.
Yeah, a little over 10 years. Time flies really fast, especially post 20s.
Oh yeah.
I know that you've performed at live venues in the past and currently, and you still do a lot of Twitch stuff. And just in general, you are who I think is like not only really great at karaoke, but just in terms of like performances, like you have a natural knack for entertainment. And so I really wanted to understand and get to know a little bit more about how you started off with music, especially kind of like growing up. Were you guys like, did you grow up in a musical family like environment? Like, give me a little more background on that.
Yeah, ultimately, where I started with music with like a piano, um, and there was a little Casio keyboard in our house, but none of us were really musical in terms of my parents or my sisters. They're all very more STEM, business oriented. But the piano was there for fun, and I remember listening to songs on the radio, like, in car rides to grocery stores and everything, and remembering the melody and like trying to find that melody on the piano like scale. And that was really fun for me growing up. Ultimately, I think that probably switched. The interest with melody, like, going hum, 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 probably was helped by a karaoke machine that we got closer to like elementary school. like maybe like when I was like 7 or 8 years old. For like holiday parties, we would visit like other Filipino families. Like I'm Filipino for everyone who's watching this. And they would have something called a magic mic, which some of y'all might you might be familiar with. It's a microphone that has a karaoke list built into it, and you could plug it into your TV and sing like Backstreet Boys, Ricky Martin, Frank Sinatra, all sorts of different things. And yeah, I love singing on the karaoke machine. In high school, I was gifted a guitar, and that was gifted to me by my sister's friend because she saw that I liked writing lyrics and I like singing to melodies. And I think the rest is history from there. I kind of just expanded my instrument pool and leaned into creativity as an awesome medium because it's really fun.
Did your parents and family and extended family, did they encourage music as well, even though they weren't necessarily like you mentioned, necessarily a musically oriented family? Is it something that they kind of recognize as, hey, like Chris has a lot of potential with music, or we notice he really enjoys music, so here's some things like, I don't know, like a guitar or another instrument that they can, you can play with. Like, was there kind of family support around that?
So I'm gonna keep it real with y'all. We have to keep it 100 here at the MJL podcast, y'all. The first half of my life, I didn't feel that it was super supported or smiled upon in my family. Probably from like ages like 1 to maybe like 16, I would say. It was really more so a thing that I liked doing and exploring and maybe talking about with friends. But I think probably from like early adulthood onward, my family started to wrap their heads around the idea of me playing music seriously or as like a deep hobby, possible career, probably in my later years of life, probably like early adulthood onward to now. It took a little bit of time for them to understand, like, oh, you can make money doing this. People, can get impacted by the lyrics and the songs you make. And it's it doesn't always have to be like something that logically makes sense on paper, right? To be worth doing.
So it sounds like you didn't necessarily have a lot of formal training, like musical training, like growing up. It's not like, it sounds like you didn't necessarily take like piano lessons or guitar lessons or anything like that. Uh, so how did you like learn and pick up music, especially like, is it more of a self-taught kind of thing? Is it just trying to mimic the sounds that you would hear on the radio or a song, or in any sort of musical performance? Talk to me a little bit about that.
15 years old, 14, 15 or 16 years old, I did take a month of guitar lessons. So shout out to the parentals for supporting with that early on. But going back to your question, how did I learn? I think, yeah, there was minimal training. Like, yeah, there was a month of guitar lessons in high school, and then in college, I took it upon myself to like take introductory piano courses and try to stick to that to like understand, sheet music a little bit and like also just different formulations of chords. For the most part, though, most of my musical training and like sort of growth has kind of been self-taught. I have relative pitch, which for those of you who aren't as musical savvy means that if you hear a note on the song, or even walking by, you have the ability to reproduce that note in your head and then find it on a scale of like a guitar or like a piano and play it. And that has helped me quite a bit in at least my training and journey, in making songs and everything like that.
How did you develop that musical pitch? Is it something someone is innately attuned to, or is it more, is there training involved with developing a musical pitch to, better recognize or increase the chances you'll recognize which chord it falls under?
There are two types of pitch that I think are related to this conversation. There's perfect pitch, which people are born with. A recent music friend told me that perfect pitch actually means you can not only find the note associated with what you're hearing outside, but you also can have like a almost like a letter pop into your brain, like synesthesia in some ways. Like, oh, that's an A flat. Oh, that's a B. So I think that part, like that side of the pitch, sort of quirks. My Hero Academia reference, is like on the, the innate side, like you're born with it. Relative pitch, I feel like you can be born with, but it is also something you can train. Over time, I think it's ultimately just really being by a piano scale and then listening to a note and then just trying to find it, trying your best to find it as quickly as you can, keep clicking on each different key until you find it and you feel that they match. That definitely helps, I think, at least build comfort with the idea of creating music on the fly, like purely off of sound.
Talk about your musical journey, right? In terms of you finding what kind of genre you really wanted to master and be more of immersed in, I should say. So I know that you really specialize in nerd rap, and even just improv in general. So talk to me about your musical journey to get to that point. Like, were you always doing nerd rap, like up until this point? Were there other genres you were dipping into, and then how did you kind of, you know, uh, end up with kind of committing to nerd rap as kind of your main bread and butter, when you're actually doing your performances?
I'm the type of person that finds like value and magic in like all genres, and that sounds very granola-y, but I can tell you that my musical journey, at least in terms of in terms of genres that I feel comfortable with, I could tell you that it's been kind of like a winding one, and maybe some of your listeners can empathize with the order of things because a lot of it was trend based. Started out in like as a kid, you listen just to whatever's on the radio or whatever your older siblings or guardians are listening to. So lots of pop, lots of '90s sort of grunge. As I got into like high school and middle school, I leaned more into like emo, kind of like rap slash emo, where Fallout Boy, the My Chemical Romances, the Sum 41, and then on the hip hop side, like I really was a fan of like Fabulous and Busta Rhymes and like Lupe Fiasco. Um, and I think from there, I think, high school going into college, I kind of took a step away from more distorted rock, like emo, distorted emo, to more so like folky guitar, like Death Cab for Cutie, like Isley, the Shins, that kind of stuff. Going into college, I really started practicing a lot of freestyle rapping and a lot more, I think, just creative energy with whoever I could find because it was a whole new world of networking connections with new people. And I think that it was probably around that time that I started to develop my own sound as someone who likes to sing, but someone who also enjoys rapping really fast and rapping very spontaneously about maybe more thoughtful or nerdy things, right? Like the stuff that I find myself spending time doing, like playing Pokemon on the DS or, writing in a journal about my anxiety and stuff. And yeah, I think nerdcore rap, what you mentioned, I think is a big part of my style because I think those in nerd culture, and now there's several types of nerd like subgenres of nerd culture. I'm going to repeat that. Nerdcore, as you mentioned, is definitely a big part of my style because I think nerd culture just has a bunch of subcultures. Like there are those who are big fans of D&D or anime or like, something very specific. And I'm the type of person who can get really obsessed about a, a, like, a new topic, a new thing. And I think nerdcore allows me to rap a lot about something very specific or niche. Yeah, which you've probably heard a couple.
I was going to say, would you say that the writing element and like the lyricist and songwriting element, like was that kind of all forged, kind of prior to the nerd core rap stuff? Because you mentioned going through a bunch of different genres and things like that. And so I'm curious how the songwriting, right, kind of came to be, and how you decided on choosing or specializing more into nerdcore rap over, other genres. Not to say that they didn't influence, what you do, but kind of choosing that as your main musical expression medium.
In terms of songwriting, I think you kind of write to your truths. I'd like to think like when you're tapping into your artistry, you write about stuff that you can relate to, or stuff that um, means something to you that you can enjoy. And before I had a guitar, which was given to me during high school, um, I kind of focused on like poetry. So early on, writing poems about where are the cookies? I'm on the lookies, like stuff like that. Like when you're like barely talking, you're a super young kid. Like in middle school and high school, you write love poems, to ask somebody out to the dance or to the, like, or to, I guess, get your feelings out about a crush or something like that. And some of those things never change, in terms of writing goofy lyrics, writing heartfelt lyrics, or introspective, like really, maybe sometimes even like deep lyrics about an experience you're having with like mental health or anything. Like, I think in terms of the songwriting journey, like those two things stuck. I think the medium that helped them just changed as you get more, as you grow as a person. So when I was a kid, it was just poems. When I got a guitar, it was sort of songs about heartbreak or whatever you're dealing with in high school. College onward, your problems start to get more complex and you have more to write about because your human experiences expand. So I would say that's the journey. Poetry into like high school problems, into like life problems. And here we are now.
I'm curious how those factors are integrated and thought through in your creative thought process for creating, new music. Like, how do you know when you want to take certain elements of what you're writing and how you're feeling, and how do you put that from thought to pen to paper and then eventually to your voice?
Yeah, very good question. Very, very good question. I think mileage will vary for every different person who tries this out, but and it actually even varies within the individual because there are songs that I have like Tapioca Baby, which is a love song about boba. That's the Tapioca Baby logo right there. Me and my friends, we wrote that in the course of 2 hours, and it was written off of the strength of fun. Fun was the goal. We were outside of an open mic venue, and they ran out of spots for performers, so we decided to jam in the car outside anyway. And when your goal is really clear about what you write about, like kind of like what's the point of this song, or what's the point of us making this song here? I think that allows you to create a chorus that allows you to create sort of a North Star, a home base. Um, Meaning, a big part of my songwriting process is really more so like, what am I trying to convey? And then from there, we don't have to have the perfect rhyme for it just yet. Maybe we can just journal or free write buzzwords or just even feelings and thoughts around that thing, on like a piece of paper or on like a Milanote or an Evernote, whatever you use, bullet journal. After that, once you find out that what that North Star is, you can then, write verses and stuff to support that thesis or that, main point. And after that, that's where the music comes in. And I'll tell you right now, it's not always that linear. Sometimes it starts with, you walking on the street, and then you think of a random melody that intrudes your head, like a la 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 la, and you don't have words for it yet. Um, Shout out to everybody who shout out to everyone who co-signs the app voice memos, because the iPhone, Android, everybody, they all have like a voice log app, and I think that helps. If I don't have words for it, la 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 la, record it on the voice memo, refer back to it later, try to cook something with that. So music, lyrics, very teeter-tottery of which one comes first, but that's my usual process in figuring things out.
That kind of leads me into my next question of like mentally, emotionally, or even let's say spiritually, like how do you prepare yourself for those brainstorm sessions, as well as preparing yourself to songwrite? Like, is there a ritual or a mode that you like to get yourself in to get in the zone or a creative zone, I would say, in order to produce some of your best ideas and best work?
There is not a zone, not for me personally. The zone is very. Have you seen the movie Soul? The pic.
I have not.
Um, Definitely worth a watch. I won't speak much further on it, but in terms of the idea of the quote unquote zone for my specific artistry, it's very fickle, but I respect it. Where there will be times where you want to sit down, you have your guitar plugged in, you have your notes app ready, you are in a quiet space, and you have like free time, um, and it doesn't come to you. As in, whatever you're trying to create, it doesn't come. There are times where randomly you're eating a bowl of spaghetti and you only have 2 hours before you have to do some errands or something. There are times where the zone will randomly pop up and say, I'm here right now, and it's time. Figure, like, fit it in. Fit in the brainstorming and come to a point before you need to do the next thing you need to do. Um, then there are times where, yeah, it's perfect, where you had a free day and then you allowed yourself to just fully kind of explore creativity. And I'm thankful for those days too. But to be completely frank, and maybe my fellow folks with ADHD who are listening into the pod, they might attest to this. It's very nonlinear when it comes through, but when it comes through, it hits like a truck. Yeah.
I think I agree on that. I agree on the hit like a truck kind of phrase, and I think that's one of the things that's important is to capture that essence when it does come in full force. Because obviously sometimes you don't know when it's going to happen. I think for me, because I work in a creative sort of marketing, creative marketing kind of field, I try to have routines, like especially like if I go out for a walk, right? Like I'll use that time to just kind of let my mind wander, and it may not necessarily, nothing may actually come from it, but just kind of like prepping myself to get in that zone because I know that the more times that I kind of do something on a routine and I can let my mind wander, that if I'm doing something else, like the more often that I let my mind wander and have those breaks between something really a mix between something structured, like, oh, I need to work on this task versus like, okay, I'm doing this routine of walking, but then mentally, like, it's not structured. And so, at least for me, that's how I try to let things kind of come into the zone. It needs to marinate a little bit. It's the time I can make connections. I can look at things and be like, oh, this looks like this could be interesting if it was mixed with XYZ, right? And that's like some pseudo brainstorming kind of going on in the background as I'm doing this very mundane, physical task kind of thing. And that's something that I know has helped me in the past, not just for that one moment, but just it's a lead up to um, other moments where that storm of creativity kind of just comes to you. It's like you have to have different stimulations, right? Like mental and emotional stimulations that jog the brain, jog the creativity. And you just need to be exposed. And, or for me, I just need to be exposed in different environments. But for me, that's kind of like they have to be sort of planned environments. Like, okay, I'm going to walk. Maybe I'll go to a coffee shop. I'll sit down and just drink a coffee or tea and just think about nothing or with no specific agenda for an hour or so. And then stuff just comes, right? In terms of creative thoughts and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty magical what an idle mind can do, or like a mind that can make itself idle while doing something else, daydreams and the ability to sort of the human brain's ability to, I think about one thing while doing something else and then like catalog it for later. I think it's a beautiful thing because in that sense, it's like you were saying, like you're doing mundane tasks and you thought about something. You said, "Oh, that's interesting. Like let's play with that later on." And you mentioned the idea of moments, where I think the ability to log those things to come back to at the right time is very very powerful. And yeah, if you can find a way to, I guess I guess what's it called? Bring about those moments or set yourself up for success through like taking a note and even being intentional with how you spend your time later, like you were saying, kind of like gather your thoughts, like find a chill environment, like all the more power to you. Like all the more power because it's an awesome thing to do.
Yeah, just from even interviewing previous creative people like comic book writers, aspiring actors, things like that. You know, they talk about often how they do uh, very like you think about creativity. Like you just think sometimes it's like pie in the sky; it comes out of nowhere. But actually, for some people, and for a lot of people, actually for a lot of people, uh, they say that sometimes just having that structured thing, right, like gets them kind of in the zone so that they can be prepared for those moments when ideas come. So it's like you need those boring structured moments in order to kind of create almost your best work in essence, which is kind of an oxymoron in a sense, or very ironic, I would say.
Yeah, it is. It is super ironic because I think different creative people have different creative problems, right? Like some people have no problem starting projects but have trouble finishing them, getting past perfectionism or getting past procrastination. Other folks have no problem finishing products or projects, creative projects, but have a issue, I think, starting a lot of them, right? Like they can really tunnel vision into like one specific song or piece or video. And I think what you were mentioning right there is if your goal is to create to create work like that, like a depth of work or like a broad amount of work, like and actually like have it in the universe, it's like structure helps. Structure immensely helps in that regard. And that took a long time for me to respect that idea that like what you're speaking about reminds me of my filmmaker friend Thomas. He also mentioned the idea that you can make almost intentional blocks of creativity moments where the goal is strictly to try, to show up and try. It could lead to a bunch of like paper balls in the garbage can in the entire two hours you scheduled out, but at the very least, that got some groundwork for the next session, whether it's planned or not. So I think, yeah, no, I agree with you. I would agree with you in terms of the structure piece.
Is there any way that you've incorporated structure in terms of like your planning or the way that you prepare for your songwriting? Or let's say if you're preparing for any sort of musical performance, like is there a structure that gives you brings you comfort, right? That gets you in a mindset of like I'm ready to perform.
In terms of specifically performance, because I know there I personally have a different structure for how I handle completing like a song, like recording, versus preparing for like performing live or on Twitch. Um, yeah, to clarify, you meant performance, right?
Yeah, performance. Yeah.
For performance, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think for performance, I think a big part of it is, I guess, sort of mentally knowing that you have a date coming, like a like XYZ date is coming, and you're clear about your goals for this event. Like, do you want to sell tickets? Do you want to get your name out there? Are you doing this just for the sake of expression to show people that this is what I'm going through? And these pieces help me cope with life and everything like that. Like, figure out your goal. That's the first thing I do. And then the next thing I do from there is I guess the logistical piece of what do I need for the venue, right? Like, Do I need a band to be able to play at this loud bar? Then okay, talk to the people that, need to join. Is it an acoustic venue like a coffee shop? Then okay, we're good with what we got. And it's like figuring out medium because for me, I rap over instrumental beats that, I produce. And then at the same time, I also do play like live instruments and have a loop machine. So medium is important to figure out, what we're doing with this show, with this performance. I think the most direct answer to this question, though, is I think, to be honest, when there is a show that has a clear date, like, 2 or 3 days from now, for instance, um, closer to the date, I get immensely focused and I try to eat healthier, try to hydrate, try to, get more sleep, maybe do a couple stretches or a couple things to make me feel physiologically and emotionally good to go on stage and kind of, crush it. That would be my advice for anybody is like healthy food the day of, light, lots of water, maybe some yoga stretches, easygoing thing, and vocal warm up, and then we're good. We Gucci.
Is that different than your preparation, like on the day of? Let's say, like, okay, you have a performance on the day of, right? Like, what's kind of that preparation? Like, are you preparing your voice, right? You're obviously eating healthy, things like that. But even leading up to like traveling to the venue, bringing all of your stuff, the stage setup, um, waiting for the crowd to kind of come in. Like, talk to me a little bit more about that and what your bodily sensations are like. Like, does your body tense up, right? Are you in a relaxed state, right? Like, because you're going through a transition from being off stage and preparing, and then when you're on stage, like, that's got to be a very different kind of experience.
That experience is essentially, it's a transition between butterflies and no butterflies, where the preparation on the day of, I think a lot of it may have already happened ideally before the day of, where understanding as an artist, you do your best to speak to the venue on logistical things like sound, which are really important, like what equipment, PA systems, what does the artist need to bring for their performance specifically, how many folks are playing with them, and is there room for that? Is it on a stage or is it in a coliseum setting, or are we level to the crowd? If I'm new to a venue on the day of the show, then I think the big thing that I'm thinking about is stuff like that. From there, ideally, I arrive to the venue a couple hours early, or at least an hour early, to really help solidify, those things in my head. In that sense, it's similar to like a test, right? There's like studies from like way back in the day that say like, oh, if you visit the room, that you took a test in before, like the SATs or whatever, then you'll feel that much more comfortable when you actually take the test. So I think those are big things. Introducing yourself to the venue, owner, or the folks who are running the event, and build excitement, because it is exciting for you to perform for their crowds. And closer to when people start walking in, when doors open, naturally, most performances will have a doors open period where you're there, but you're not doing the thing. People are walking. Some of them you might know. You can say hi, everything like that, but you're not doing the thing yet. In that case, I think that's where I say butterflies, where it's just handling the nervousness, handling that sort of excited energy, welcoming people in, saying hi. I think helps me, helps give me some extroverted energy to kind of jump up. But other than that, I think nothing else in terms of preparing for like a show on the day of or within the hour of. I think it's more maybe some vocal warm ups, some stretches, like I mentioned before. There's a lot of theater exercises that help get you loose, at least feeling silly, like rubber chicken, where you go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, like with all of your like limbs. And I think stuff like that really helps because it just makes you feel okay, like, you know, we're open. We're ready to get silly. We're ready to do whatever. And then you get on stage and then the butterflies go.
Sometimes I'm sure at performances you won't be the only one that's performing. Like there'll be other performers, before you, or maybe you're the first one to perform, right? So I'm curious when you have other performers at a show, right? Like how do you leverage their energy and how does that feed into your performance? Like, do you ever feel like, oh, someone really killed it right at the beginning of a show? You feel the crowd's energy really ramping up. Do you feel this pressure to kind of like match that energy? And does it ever take you out of your own comfort zone in terms of what other artists are doing or what the current crowd's energy is like?
Very good question. Very, very good question. I think the big part of that is, yeah, trying your best to be a good listener, trying your best to be, I think, aware of the event. One thing I can think of, which is slightly unrelated but very related, is set order, right? Are you the headliner of the event? Are you the middle person? Are you the opener? Are How many performers are there? These are all things that I guess help build. I think your context going into this event of what you should be performing for the overall health of the space and the night, right? Or day. Um, if somebody was performing before me, like in your example, and they crushed it, they got the crowd absolutely excited and quote unquote warmed up. That definitely does build nerves for me. But I think most of the nerves that get built for me are registering in a positive, excited, albeit sort of antsy pocket. Um, I feel motivated. There are parts that maybe could feel there being a level of competition or a level of like, ooh, like dang. But ultimately, I think those are good feelings to have if you are prepared for your performance because it makes you want to show up. It does make you want to match or expand upon or take the audience on a different plane, but not necessarily cause a decline in their experience. So for me, it's good nervous, but it is nervous if someone performs again before me and they crush it. Um, I think other opinions that I have about this topic is if you're opening, your natural goal for the event most of the time is to get the audience to be excited or to have like a good positive energy that's saying like I'm ready for more. So some of my more maybe sad emotional songs, unless they're very very popular, like ones in my catalog, I probably will refrain from because the goal is to keep the night going with people who are loving music. If you're the headliner, I think there's a reason you're headlining the event, whether you booked it or you're doing an album release show or something like that. I think in that space, you don't have to worry as much about continuing the rise. I think your goals become different. You can take them down, really, really chill, intimately. You could take them up, take them down, take them left, and take them right. Um, I think it's yeah, things to think about for sure. But yes, nerves.
I mean, it sounds like nerves are generally a really good thing, right? Like because it gets you prepared, it gets you in, probably gets you excited, right? It gets you in that moment of, yes, your body might be tensing up, but it gets you mentally focused and ready. At least that's how I guess I would imagine it.
Yeah, yeah. I think nerves do a funny psychological thing too. I remember there was a psychological study that was talking about if you don't feel proficient or competent or confident in a skill or like executing a specific thing, if like a spotlight is shined on you, that yeah, if a spotlight is illuminated upon you, you have a tendency to maybe like mess up a bit more. However, if you have a spotlight shined upon you and you feel competent or you feel excited, you feel like confident in a specific skill or executing of a thing, you actually expand. You become better at the thing you do because of the fact that you're nervous and it's something that's close to you. I say that giant anecdote, that random anecdote, to say that if you are prepared to perform, as in you practice, you've rehearsed, or you are in this realm where you are open to not practicing or rehearsing, like improv, I think the nerves only seek to help you. However, if you find yourself getting naturally tripped up more often than not because of nerves, like, causing you to forget words or to shy away or to fumble certain parts of your performance, there's probably room for exploration there. There's probably room to figure out, well, what caused the nervousness in a way that actually made me, not perform as well and not feel as good as I could have, in terms of this. And that's where it's like it's healthy both directions, I think.
I'm curious on if you have, or I'm curious if you have any examples of when maybe you flubbed up during a live performance, and you kind of got down on yourself, or maybe that it wasn't necessarily your night, like you're just a little bit out of sorts, even though you did prepare. Like, what were ways that you got yourself back on track, or at least got the crowd to be entertained, right? Because at the end of the day, like, they paid money not only to go to the bar, but also to have a live performance, hear live music. And the funny thing is, one of my comedian friends basically said the crowd wants you to succeed, right? Because they literally paid money for them to be entertained. So talk to me a little bit how you jump back from failure, or flubbing up during a musical set, and how you get the crowd back on its feet.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone, like, mileage will vary on how to, I think, properly handle this, and there's no like one fail-safe way, I believe, because venues and crowds and like the performer, like those things all just make a bunch of different um, situations where one thing can go over the other. But going back to your question, apologies. Yeah, I think an example of a time that I felt very passionate about performing well and there were mistakes in the performance that maybe threw me off. I did perform recently. I would say about 2 weeks ago. I performed at a local music venue in like an open mic setting, and at this open mic, I was performing Hyperfocus, which is a new song that I just released. Usually, people listen to Hyperfocus with a beat. I wanted to play it with guitar, like a stripped down version. And I enlisted the help of a new open mic friend that I met at this venue. And the thing was that both of our schedules were really busy, meaning that I was able to send the music over and tell, kind of direct what I wanted with the performance over like IG chat and like email, but we haven't practiced together, in person. And on the night of, you know, there were certain harmonies that I wasn't used to, like as in performing with another person, and it caused me to, I think, flub up some lyrics, a couple lines of my rap verse. Luckily, during that moment, as a performer, you at least the advice I would give anyone in that moment where you flub up is the idea that the car is still driving. You keep going. You take them home. You take them home, even if there are like bumps and you like hit a mouse on the road, even if like you get lost, you take them home somehow. And at least in that performance, after the flub ups, like a few flub ups, I was able to get it back together, rap the rest of the verse. The second half of the song was magical, I felt, for some people, as in I got a lot of compliments from the crowd afterward and from peers and individuals who were saying like, holy crap, like that was really, really cool. Um, in the post performance section, I think that flub up was a message to me that you need to try to prepare for all variables, including the ones that are outside of your control. In this case, it was the collaborator who, you know, what they do, I can't have any control over, and it showed itself in that night. So good lesson for next time to, practice more, or to find routes where, you don't run into that again.
When those moments happen, right, because sometimes they're not always planned, like do musical performers, and I'll use a football analogy, like they have audibles, right? They got to change something on the fly when something isn't working. Like, is that something that musicians prepare kind of in their back pocket, like, oh, like say that situation happened, or you mess up, or the beat is off, right? Is there something kind of in your back pockets, like, I know what I'm going to do to smooth it over, to, like you said, bring the crowd home?
I think in that sense, that's like what you do in that situation is you have a combined, almost a combined, it's a combination solution. Having both the spontaneity and the openness and like mindfulness to see what's going on, right, with the crowd, like if they're not feeling a certain type of music, um, then yes, feeling that, having that awareness. I think the second part of it is ultimately preparedness. It goes back to preparedness, where um, having several B-side tracks or B-side pieces that you can kind of cycle into effortlessly if there are any issues that happen on the fly, right? Like if I'm playing with a band and I have two guitarists and one of the guitarists like amp and cable break, meaning that we're one guitar down, then it's having the ability to pivot and say, all right, we're going to play this song instead because it doesn't need a second guitar, at least until ideally that musician like figures it out like silently. Um, that has definitely happened before. um, which I think, yeah, it's preparation, having stuff in your back pocket that you can go to and that you've practiced enough as if you were going to perform it that night, even though it wasn't on your planned set list. I think those things will take you a long way for sure.
Do you guys, when you're, let's say, preparing as a group or a band, right? Like you're going through all of your sets and things like that in preparation for an actual performance. Do you ever just ask someone that's not in your band, like, can you just like at one moment sabotage, right, our practice? And, that way, like we have to come up and prepare for something, like just accidentally unplug the cable, like, during, I don't know, maybe like an 8 hour practice session, and, we'll figure out how to resolve it. Like, how do you guys practice? And I know you mentioned you want to be prepared for these situations, but do you ever recreate any of those kinds of situations when you practice, so just so like you have a mental recreation of like what to do on the spot, so that when you actually do prepare, right, like it's not just like we have to panic for a little bit and then immediately switch to this song or do something else?
Yeah, that's a great question. That to be honest, we don't like for me, like I don't ever practice situations where there's intentional sabotage. It's a very smart idea because it does help you, I think, at least have a gauge of the emotional experience that could happen within you and your bandmates when someone is trying to do something, which does build preparedness. In fact, I think battle rappers, in the realm of like rap battling, like if it's freestyle rap battling, they probably practice their verses and their things in different contexts. Like if someone's yelling over them while they're rapping their verse or whatnot, someone's shaking them, you know. I I think that speaks to what you're saying, where it's like be ready for resistance and still execute your piece, right? Um, I don't do that explicitly, like at least with the cables that you mentioned, them unplugging things or yelling "Get off the stage" or anything like that. But what I can say is, I do try my best to practice my parts that I can practice, um, in multiple areas, in multiple spaces, at multiple times of the day. I'll rap I'll rap my verses for a rap song while, taking a shower, while waiting in line at the Pete's Coffee or whatever, at the grocery store, while there's downtime, I'll write the lyrics down, right? Like there are ways that you can, I think, build up versatility and also a kind of a good confidence in your knowledge of your work, by doing this. Um, and but we should add that. I think that could be a good exercise you brought up, Mike, of like, you know what? Have someone try to heckle you, have someone try to, shout out lyrics at like an offbeat time with you, like if they know like the same lyrics you have or the chorus, clapping offbeat, like, those things definitely help. Hire some trolls, I'm sure there's a market for that on Fiverr.
Oh, even let's say it doesn't have to be a negative externality. It could be a positive externality. Like the crowd is just so loud, right? Like it's difficult to, hear the sounds of, let's say, your other musicians or other instruments, right? Like, and you're kind of potentially in your own void. And, it's probably like maybe a different level of preparedness. Like if like your sound is just you and you can only hear your own sound and because the crowd maybe is so loud or whatever.
That also goes down to the idea of like removing variables, because there's always variables no matter what. Even like just visiting the venue not the day of the performance, I think really helps. Like go there just to be a customer so that you can kind of see where would I perform, like what would it sound like, what are some problems I could run into. I think that helps too, like with what you're saying, like um, positive, yeah, people shouting. Are people loud in this venue in general, right? Like if you're playing like a soft little folk thing on a ukulele and you're playing at a loud bar that like 4 days out of the week there's like there's a sports ball, there's like a basketball game going on in the other room and like other stuff, and loud bartender screaming, like these are things you should know about before you perform there so that you can adjust yourself accordingly. Like get a plug-inable ukulele and crank it to 11.
Makes sense. Those are all really good, I think, preparation tips and I think a mindfulness of your surroundings.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is like also have spares, you know. Having spares of stuff like cables super freaking helps. I played bass for a nerdcore artist and just rap singer, super talented artist in New York named Lex the Lexicon Artist, and my cable crapped out in the middle of a song, and I had to be calm on a stage with like over like several hundred people like watching while the rap continued. Walk to my guitar bag, which is properly placed next to the amp, and get the spare cable, replace it, come back in for the final second choruses. Like nothing happened.
I totally get that when you're performing at a small venue and it's just maybe you and a couple bandmates, it's not like you have like technicians on hand where it's just like, hey, my cable's off, right? Like I need, can you just quickly grab it in the bag and fix it, right? Like sometimes like you have to be, your own technician and things like that.
Oh yeah. Um, at least to yeah, I think if you want to be a performer that like I think gets to continue performing and has an energy of like respect. I think ownership is a big thing. Like trying not to get saved. I think as much as possible. As in you do the saving. You're the one who finds out who to talk to fix it like mid set, mid show. And if there are no solutions, like you're the one who owns up and like tells the audience what's going on or tells your bandmates what's going on, and then from there you do it live. You do the best thing you can do, right? Like you need to grab a tambourine. All right, I'm a tambourine person for the rest of the show, you know. But ownership, I think it's respect for yourself and respect for the craft too.
When you're going into a venue, how do you choose the song lineup that you decide to perform or your bandmates decide to perform?
That just requires research, research of the event. Like, what is the event's goal? In 2021, I performed at the Chinatown Music Festival, which this was around the time that the pandemic was still pretty prominent. So a lot of people were still kind of iffy about being outside, but really excited about going outside or having an opportunity to. The goal of this festival was solidarity fun times to bring people out again, to like revitalize Chinatown. Because they took a hit like revenue wise with the pandemic, and then also solidarity. So all of that came through research and just asking the promoter, like, what is this event about? You know, once I learned that it's really kind of leaning towards positivity, energy, fun, um, several songs from my catalog got like a red circle and a slash next to them. They were like, nope, this is not the song for this situation. I'm not going to play an emo song about feeling cold and being heartbroken in like a sunny day outside in like a square. Like I'm gonna play the fun stuff. I'm gonna play the goofy stuff. That said, a different context, like you're playing at a coffee shop where like everyone can hear every word you say, and the audience is really focused, and the goal is kind of like intimate connection through like art and words. Then yeah, maybe I won't play the stuff that is meant to hype people up in my catalog or repertoire, like because in this space there'll just be so much more value if I play the things that will require people to think and to kind of feel. And that's where the Feeling Cold song would go in that regard.
I think that makes sense. It sounds like you really just get a pulse of the emotion, right, that is being conveyed, and also what the promoters want people to feel. And that seems like it gives you a guiding direction in terms of your song choices.
Yeah, that. And then also, outside of the promoters and the event, it's like there are times you book with other bands or other artists. I think figuring out like what pieces work with the whole picture of that too, right? Like if the other two artists are, purely hip hop more than the rock, then I'll try to make sure to at least to complement the theme of that energy, to at least have like 50% hip hop esque stuff to be on brand with the group. I'm not going to go in there playing like polka music so that it's kind of like, hip hop, random polka guy, and then and then hip hop. Like I think, yeah, those things are just like a feeling that you get when you sign up for a show.
Got it. When you're signing up for the show, you're working with promoters, you're working with the bar owners or venue, managers and things like that. Like, talk to me a little bit about the business side of, booking a show. Like, do they reach out to you, right? And especially, let's say if you're up and coming, you may not have your own agent or anything like that. So I kind of want to learn a little bit more about like the business aspects of going on to a live performance.
In terms of the business aspects, it will definitely vary from individual to individual. I'm blessed to have, built a small network of people who like are with orgs who need like who want to book my kind of energy, my kind of music, for their events, and I got to know these people through like peers, like other musicians and everything like that. So a big part of it, I think, is if the question is like how do you find these opportunities, I think it's going to events, going to live shows, and getting to know people, and then introducing yourself, right? Like putting yourself out there, like, oh, like, do you guys host events at this bar, like this bar or shop regularly? Like, is there like a schedule? And then from there you can just start an email thread with them. um in terms of actually figuring out the business, once you solidify like a location you want to play at, I think that's really just a matter of talking to the right people, or talking to the owner of the bar or the event manager. And I think a big importance is asking questions that are kind of on a need to be basis before you even like sign the dotted line to say, all right, we're doing this date, right? Like a big things you could ask are like, what times can we perform? How many, how many people, like how many heads, like people, like fit in this venue, or like is an average night at this bar in general or at this venue in general. um what's your sound like? I think the sound system thing is immensely important, because not all venues have like a PA system that they use for announcing things that could also be like used for music purposes, like figuring out like what amps will I need to bring, what cables, what what would be best for this venue. Find those things out early on, you know. Otherwise, you'll go to the venue, they don't have the amp you're looking for. Now you're in a scramble situation, right? Like, um, yeah. And then from there, in terms of other things like the deal you work with them, in terms of, payment for the performance or like incentive for folks to come through, like that's all details and boilerplate that will vary from like I guess vary from show to show.
What are some common, I guess, boilerplate revenue structures that you see as an artist? And then are there any like kind of red flags, like when, you notice like, hey, this is not going the way that I thought it was going to go, or, you have disagreements in terms of the terms and whatnot. Like, what are those things that people also, that are performers, also kind of need to watch out for?
In terms of watching out for things, the main thing I could think about is just like communication. Like if the bar owner or the venue owner or the org owner isn't kind of communicative about stuff that needs to happen and stuff that like explicitly, like if they say stuff like, "Oh, we'll make it work," or "Oh, we'll figure something out," like those are those are situations where you as the person who's trying to be like perform at the venue, you most likely got to feel it out within yourself. Like, am I okay? Am I okay with this? If your goal is expression, if your goal is to perform your pieces in like a space with a roof over the head and everything like that, and that's the goal, like that's the primary goal over like making money or getting exposure or networking to folks who are coming to the show, then sure, I don't think that's a red flag. I think it's more so a thing that like you roll with the wind at that venue. But if you have any semblance of goal to make this like a thing that leads to other things, like having good professional footage of this show, getting ticket sale revenue from the show, merch sales, you know, using this as leverage to book future shows, I would highly suggest that you be very direct with what you are looking for, and you be very direct with asking them what are they looking for or what they can provide. Some venues, yeah, part of it will go to performers, part of it will go to the bartending staff and to the food staff. Orgs, they might have a budget, in which case, you do you talk and you figure out what works for everybody. But yeah, other red flags, I can't really think of any. I think the main bad performances I've had involve situations where somebody else, not myself, booked the show, and they did not get those direct deliverable questions that I mentioned before of like what's the sound like, who's going to be there to help run tickets, or do we need to have somebody to run our own tickets? And because they weren't communicative to my friend who booked the show, and they weren't, my friend, respect to them, wasn't direct or like getting like determined to get that information, the show was definitely messy because there wasn't amplification for sound, there wasn't somebody running the tickets, like we had to make duct tape solutions, which the people who come, if they support you, they'll understand. But I think a goal is to really have that as figured out as possible so that they don't have to worry about it and you don't have to worry about it the day of. So those would be my red flags.
Got it. I'm curious on the monetary side, are there considerations that, different up and coming artists will use to say like, you know what, like I need to get paid X amount in order for this to actually make sense or to break even, right? Like, because obviously performing is a lot of work. You're putting all of your creative energy to perform, and there's, I'm sure plenty of cases where artists are underpaid and relative to the level of their performance. So, just kind of curious if there are what factors that artists think about in terms of the monetary side of like performing. If it is like you're trying to make this kind of a professional sort of thing, or you want your side hobby to be really, really worth it.
I think a good mentality to go into it, especially if you're just starting, is that you are going to be in the red for a while. There's going to be expenses that go towards jam spaces, expenses that go towards, if you're like hiring musicians like at a certain level to like play for you or and stuff like that. All the Ubers or the driving, the gas, the food, stuff like these, I think, are all upfront costs, and there's no way to avoid them, especially if nobody knows who you are yet. Meaning, when you're booking things at first, I think, frankly, you probably need to go into it saying, like, you know what, I need to like level up, and what they can offer. Like, you can try to wiggle, and negotiate, but it's definitely I think paying of dues early on, and that also means financially. One way to think about it would also be context of the show, which is a recurring theme of this convo, which is if you got an opportunity to play for like a college showcase and they have like a assistant student board or like an org of some sort, like like an association, I think those are situations where um, they have like a budget, a general budget for everything entertainment related. In which case, that could just be general knowledge for you to think about to be like, okay, well, there's something that was focused on paying performers, which is good for you because that means that maybe you can get compensated a little better. That said, if you're like booking a show at like a like a bar or a venue, I think there isn't necessarily a budget for entertainment. This is more so two sort of services running at the same time, like music and then the actual bar for like entertainment purposes. They're like working hand in hand. So in those situations, you know, go in with a healthy mentality that you're not going to be making that much, but it does help because you're building up your portfolio, like you know, the performance notches on your belt.
Would you, happen to know people who, are aspiring to try to go full time with music by any chance? I'm just curious, like, what their thought process is. Like maybe they have a full time job, but they're also ramping up like their touring. You also mentioned building up a portfolio, like as well. And I guess like, what is the benefit of having the portfolio relative to like how does that affect making you or other people who are maybe aspiring to go full time like make the leap into being a full time roadie or musician?
I preface all this with saying that being a full time gigging musician is possible, but it is immensely hard, in my opinion. I say that's the preface. That being said, if you are leaning towards that direction, it's possible. I think a big part. I think a big part of getting quote unquote portfolio or having some like performances under your belt. I think is is the fact that this medium that you're choosing to perform in, possibly for compensation, it's seen and heard and felt. And I think if you can get performances and get footage of those good performances, that is evidence that you can post on like your social media or like, your website, which can give folks who aren't as keen to you an idea of what you're about. And I think the effective the effective conveying of what you are about is really important, especially in today's day and age when everyone's super short attention span, like TikTok level attention span. Like, oh, if I didn't like that first chord, I'm out. Which is why, like, having footage of your performance with captions, right, with subtitles, for instance, then that might keep them on for at least 3 more seconds. At which point they can hear the awesome part of your performance, and then that could change their mind on whether they go to your show or not, or whether they book you or not, whoever the they is, you know. So I think building up some experiences and some shows, even if they aren't lucrative or, you know, is really good for that aspect, to basically show what you can do, to future people, you know. Um, and then you ramp up from there as you build more and more, I guess, quote unquote, credibility, you know, and fan base, of course, too.
Would you say from like a music revenue generation like sort of perspective, right? Like there's live performances, right? And I'm sure as you know, you build your portfolio, as someone builds their portfolio, it allows them to, you know, graduate, right? Potentially from, or offers more opportunities from going just to the local bar scene or community events to actually, I don't know, for example, performing at weddings or performing at galas or, you know, events where maybe they have bigger budgets, you know, to pay you more, but also that probably means that your production or style of music also has to fit, you know, that specific theme. And then you also have the, you know, the Spotify, YouTube ad revenue where you actually play your music, where people digitally discover, you know, your talents or, you know, a performer's talent. So like, talk to me about like the revenue generation side and like how maybe artists, you know, try to strategically, you know, maybe place more emphasis on one thing or another, or it's like, how do artists decide which parts of the music industry or business to really focus on?
When I released my first album in 2018, I think I was talking to a few mentors and friends. Like, I consider like Lex the Lexicon artist, an awesome mentor and friend. And we spoke about it. And I think, you know, you go into each platform knowing hopefully with a little bit of research, knowing the pros and cons of going there, right? So the pro and con for Spotify, for instance, is that it's universal and everybody uses Spotify. And a lot of things are based on playlists in terms of people blowing up. And there's a chance that, you know, if you post something and you promote it properly, like even within Spotify itself, like there's a chance that it can get to a lot of people, right? So an example of this would be my song Cherry Jubilee, which I was doing in collaboration with Miyune, who is a VTuber on Twitch. That song had, you know, 200 pre-saves, like 200, 300 pre-saves, and I think that even alone got it to, you know, sort of pop off in a bunch of different playlists and show up on the radar of Spotify's algorithm. And now it's almost at 400K plays, you know, in the course of 2 years, which for me, like I've never experienced anything like that before. And I think a big part of that is that Spotify, everyone uses it. And um, that's a good thing about it. The downside, however, is that their artist payment structure is very geared towards, you know, them getting the majority of the pie and the artists getting like a small piece, which I think naturally rolls with, you know, the guidelines that they set up when they made the app and knowing that everyone's using it. So it's like TLDR, Spotify, good for exposure, good because it's universal. People will be more likely to listen to you all over the world. You know, downside is you probably aren't getting super, 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 super paid off of it. You might be getting something, but you know, it varies. I think other things are just like, yeah, like YouTube. Like YouTube's the same thing where, you know, you have to have your channel reach a certain amount of subscribers and then get monetization, and then from there, you know, those percentages occur. But I think similar to what we were just talking about going into the red, YouTube as a platform is free to upload to, but you have to put in a lot of time, and you probably have to put in a lot of work and resources into making quality videos that will get your subscribers up and get people to click on it and watch it through towards monetization, meaning you are going to be going in the red, most likely in some way for a while before it starts to build traction. But you have to walk the walk in that regard.
think that makes sense from a creator perspective. You hear a lot of it where like people have been grinding for years, right, just to gain some initial traction, and then it eventually sort of pops off the longer you sort of stick with it. I'm very curious though, when you mentioned the 400K plays for your song Cherry Jubilee, like did you notice any increase in like follower growth or like, let's say people on your Twitch channel, right? Like even though you had the discoverability and awareness part of it, was there any capture on your side in terms of growth?
There's not a linear answer to that question, but the short answer is yes. It's definitely not a situation where it's like this, you know. Some days it's more so than others, but I think a big part of it is seeing that, the YouTube video for Cherry Jubilee still gets comments to this day, like randomly here and there. Um, and that, seeing that, seeing like emails or purchases of the song on Bandcamp to this day, like, from fans of it, and then also random people coming in, or yeah, like people coming in, into the stream complimenting the song, like saying, hey, like I just want you to know it was awesome, or I just found it. Those things are areas where, yeah, retention I feel has happened in a good way, in both the way of like, people being in tune with what I do outside of that song, and then also from like a more so an emotional level that like, like we created something great, and people, it doesn't stop at the year that it, got dropped, right? Which is a fear of many musicians, is you drop a song, it's awesome, and then everyone kind of moves on to the next thing, right? Like that's I think a fear every person who creates and releases has, right? So yeah,
No one really wants to be a one-hit wonder, essentially, is what you're saying.
yeah, nobody wants to be a one-hit wonder. Well, I mean, some people do. Like, there's some folks who want that one hit wonder and then they live off the royalties forever, which is the running joke. Like, like Gautier, this "Now you're just somebody that I used to know." I'm sure like that song is popular enough that he's still getting royalties off of like all the the Walgreens and Safeway plays that that has, and like soundtracks and stuff. But anyway, sorry, big tangent. Yeah, nobody wants to. I think nobody wants to feel that their best creative work and self is behind them. You know, as in, I released that song in 2021, and I don't want to feel that that's the best song that I ever made, and that there's no returning to that in some ways. And some of that is rat brain. Like, as humans, we want dopamine, we want rise, we want like to see upward movement. But ultimately, I think it is just coming from a place that, like, you know, yeah, we want to be remembered in this world, and we want to continue releasing stuff, of course. But you know, it's good to see that. It's good to see that people appreciate your work, even in like future years.
Since we were talking about, music on different platforms, whether it's Spotify, YouTube, live performances, shoot, even you mentioned Twitch as well. Do you ever think about, like, as you're developing a song, it's like, wow, this would be a really great TikTok tune, right? Or like this one part, this one beat is going to be really, really catchy. And just thinking about like the different lengths or sections of the song in terms of like where you would want the audience to really gravitate towards, just given how, social media and music consumption today has different kinds of experiences, from like 10-second jingles to beats to 3-minute songs to the extended versions, the whatever, right? There's a ton of different renditions. So I'm just curious if that's something that, as you're brainstorming different songs and ideas, right, that like you're keeping in mind the different mediums in which it potentially can be experienced and used.
To be honest, it's annoying, but probably true that, there will be more, there will be a higher chance of like a song popping off if it has like an immensely catchy subsection that's very digestible in a real, like a reel, real TikTok IG story passing through. Um, I've never explicitly tried to write a song with the goal of being within those like sort of 10-second parameters. It is something that I'm open to trying, but to be honest, I think for me, the goal, if my goal is to write a catchy song, I want the whole song to feel catchy to me, which doesn't necessarily mean that there's a part that's memeable, if that makes sense. I mentioned Tapioca Baby earlier, where the chorus is literally tapioca baby, baby, tapioca baby, baby, and then you repeat that and like a slight, you know, slight melody variation. But stuff like that, I didn't write it for TikTok, but I feel like it would be something that would be TikTokable, just from the standpoint of like, I can bob my head to it, I could sing along with it, and it's fun, it's goofy. My goal was to be fun and goofy when I wrote it. It wasn't for it to be a TikTok thing. But yeah, so that was a huge word vomit. But long story short, never wrote with the expectation that this is a TikTok focused song, but it's something definitely worth exploring.
Okay. Yeah, it was just a question out of curiosity, just because you see different artists. People talk about people talk about different artists as like, oh, they made this song right because they knew people were going to remix it or going to take different parts of the music video and turn it into memes and stuff like that. Like, I'm just curious if that's something if that had ever gone through your thought process at one point in time or another as a performer and entertainer.
I do love it from an idea of like unlikely hits, right? Where like for instance on TikTok there's like the cat jam song that circles everywhere. It's like where the cat's going meow 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 meow. Have you heard that?
I haven't heard it, unfortunately. I don't spend enough time on TikTok, I would say.
All right, it sounds like this. It's like it's like and it literally started with yeah, it literally started well, it doesn't end. Like you never get to the end because it just loops. Like that's the TikTok classic. But literally, if you watch the original video, it's just this cat who's partially blind who's meowing, asking for food, and he did this part. But like someone someone found the curiosity to make it into like a beat, and now it's the running thing on TikTok where there's usually like cats, like people's pets bobbing their head to the music, like they're making the cat bob their head. That's funny to me, like a funny trend.
Speaking of, I guess, sounds and visuals, I'm curious. We talked about developing, brainstorming, and preparing, a song and where you're inspired from. Like, talk to me a little bit about the music video piece, right? As well, like you come out with the song, you come up with the idea. Are you thinking about the music video at the same time you are with the song, right? Like, what's the process in terms of the development timelines with a music video in relation to a song that you're invested in?
I think the music video, for me personally, it just comes after. When I'm writing the song, the goal is to express what I need to express, and then like yeah, get it out in like a quality version of it. Usually the music video conversation happens after I get after the song is fully complete and mastered, and then at that point it becomes almost part of the like marketing rollout of like when you drop a new song, like it's dope that people can listen to it, but they also want to see a video too often. Like they want to see something that they can watch to also experience it too, like in a different way. So usually after the song is finished, and I'm like, yeah, that's where the music video comes in, and then I like I talk to whoever like can like match that music video vibe. We brainstorm. Shout out to my friend Thomas, who's made a lot of my YouTube videos. Danny, our mutual friend, has also made a lot of videos for me, and that has been really really fun working with her and Thomas. And then most recently for Hyperfocus, Hal, who was the collaborator on that track, he was able to dive into the music video with me, and like this was all well after we finished the song.
Talk to me a little bit more about that process of starting off a music video after you have created a song.
A big part of its vibe, like, is if you've like worked with someone or you're friends with somebody, or you've seen somebody's work before and like you like the style, what they've done, you like the choices, then you could probably just decide, hey, let's try this out. Once you decide on who you work with and like that the vibe is good, I was recently put onto a website, millinote.com. That's like a bullet journal that's online. And this bullet journal allows you to write text in it, write notes. You could upload YouTube videos to it in like a little small embed format. There's to-do lists. There's a lot of features. I've been using that ever since I was introduced to it, with whoever I collaborate with. And for music videos, if we have nowhere to start, maybe we do a mood board of like, well, what does the feeling of the song feel like? All right, it feels sad, it feels cold, it feels ooh. Think about pictures that match that feeling and then post them into that sort of Millinote shared, interface, bullet journal. And from there, you could post videos, of videos that you think have a style that looks like what's in your head. Because creatives, we can definitely have very vivid ideas of what we would want out of a work. And I think showing references, infinitely helps everyone, you know. Um, and that doesn't just go for music videos. Like if you commission me for like a beat or like a rap verse or something musical, I'll usually often first ask like, what are some points of reference that you think you're going for, like that I can listen to help, tailor the route we're going.
Do you ever consider like what limitations or what the song vibes that you don't want are? And is that something that you kind of list beforehand to help create, some guidelines in terms of limitations?
I'm usually the one that has trouble with limitations. I'm kind of like Michael Scott from The Office, where he's like to this, this local video company, I want the flower to zoom out, and the flower is actually a planet, and then the planet's actually a pearl on a cat's necklace, and then the cat is actually sitting in a garden next to the flower. And then, the creative team is like, okay, with the budget we have and the time constraints we have, we can't do any of that, right? Like, so I'm usually the one with my head in the sky. I think, to be honest, it's really about like open communication with your collaborator or with the person you're commissioning, and just sort of saying like, yeah, this is what I'm looking for, like what do you think we can do, or like what's within your skill set, right? And as long as people are honest and like y'all are just going back and forth with it, I think you'll figure something out.
If you're raising the bar for what the limitations are, if the limitations are limitless, like how do you rein them in, right? Your collaborators, right? To get to a point where it's like, all right, we have a direction, let's go with this, right? Like, are there layers, right? And layers of the onion you got to peel back, right? Is that like a time consuming process in terms of like how do you get it to a more, from a pie in the sky place to a more realistic place?
That varies from individual to individual for sure. Because some people are going to be more grounded than you, some people are going to be even more flighty than you, right? So in that sense, if I'm working with a grounded individual, someone who's a little bit more in the realistic plane, usually it'll just naturally gravitate where they will set those boundaries out there for me, and then we work with them from there. If there is, a project where both me and the collaborator, the music video maker, are both flighty or both have our like quote unquote heads in the sky, I think it's probably important for one of the two parties to softly at some point put their foot down. And what I mean by put their foot down, I don't necessarily mean it in the way of like causing an argument or like, this, but I think somebody between the two needs to lead. And even if it's a soft lead, I think it goes a long way. So, for instance, if both parties are super down with just exploring different options and trying different versions of a song, video, blah, 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 at some point, one of the two people, and this happened in more recent projects where, like, I was the person that said, hey, let's shoot to release this video by like I'm just giving a random date, April 15th, right? If I give that even something as simple as a date and like an intention, like we're finishing this by then, that naturally will set a lot of things in place of like, all right, well, that pie in the sky thing, we can't do that in the 8 days we have till April 15th from today, Mike. Let's scale it to something a little bit, more grounded or more like, or find other ways to get a similar feeling that isn't as resource intensive.
What are the things you're willing to compromise with versus the things that you're like, okay, other than the date, right? Like it has to go live or be finished by this date. Are there creative elements where you're like, this is a must have, like things you won't compromise on, with your brainstorming team?
First thing to determine is knowing yourself and trying your best to know the person you're working with. If both of you are in a place where I'm down with whatever, like, oh, like I'm down to accommodate to what you want, that is usually a potential pitfall problem area because it then becomes
Sounds like circular logic. It's like, I'll accommodate what you want. It's like, cool, I'll accommodate what you want. But then like it just keeps going in that.
it's sort of like, yeah, like you said, an infinite circle where no decision is being made and therefore nothing is getting created, and that is a problem. Like things aren't happening in real time when both folks are just kind of dancing. So in that sense, I think you have to feel out as the person with your collaborator. Let's say it's one other person. Feel out if they are, in that accommodating temperament, or if there's somebody who's, more concise, or, and then from there, you can adjust yourself for the sake of the team. Where if there's someone who's saying, just tell me what you want to do, and then I'll go from there. Like, I need your energy to start the car. Even if they don't explicitly tell you that, try starting the car. Being like, all right, I'll give you what you ask for, and then we roll. Like, I might give you a lot. I might give you more than thing, but the beauty of it's an ongoing conversation. So there's no one time that I'm the leader, and then it's like that forever. I think other ways to think about it are also like kind of the situation of like, of the collaboration of like, is this a fun project? Is this something that is meant for the music video maker to expand on skills? Are you paying them? Or is this like is this a service? These are things where it actually does affect it affects your preferences for the video quite a lot. Like if you're paying somebody, a sizable amount, for instance, then it's probably more okay for you to be like, I really need 20 roses to fall at this angle in this video, and that's like a little bit more non-negotiable. I think in the guise of a service, like of a, then yeah, hold to your truth, right? That being said, if it's collaboration or if it's barter or something else, like I think from there, your values change in terms of like, hey, like I would like that, but I also do want you to have fun making this project. And we're both putting in a lot of work, so let's compromise. Let's figure things out.
So this all sounds like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of raid party. Not that I've ever really played Dungeons and Dragons, but I would just imagine, you have a group of people you're collaborating with. Everyone has a specific role, and the music or the end result is the boss, right? Like that you're trying to like sort of like take down and chop away at bit by bit. And that kind of leads me to my next question of like, how do you choose your party, right? In terms of like the collaborators you go with, and do you set the roles up front, right? Before you guys, start on the project, just because you were talking about, being explicit with what roles you wanted, your preference would be what roles people take, right? And, how they can contribute, to the end project.
I think, how do you choose your party members? Who do you get along with? Who do you get along with goes a long way. As in vetting if like y'all can, if you the way you communicate they understand and vice versa, which sounds very robotic, but I'm neurodivergent and it comes up a lot more than you think, in terms of figuring out if our communication styles match, or if they can be in a place where they're not bad. They don't have to be great, but not bad. Figuring out what would be good for both parties to be similar and kind of the same or whatnot, and then figuring out what's good that it's different, right? Like in D&D, I'm a warrior. I would choose to, let's say, swipe my sword and like punch and just bloody knuckle everything I go through. That being said, there's a mission that involves taking care of a small bunny and its kin and escorting them home. Like I wouldn't want a bunch of warriors like like in that party to take them down. They might be rough with the bunnies. I probably would want like a medic who maybe I disagree with, or their methods I don't understand, but it's good. It's good for the overall mission. That they have different skills than me. Other ways I think about it too is like if I'm collaborating with people, it's like who's leading this situation. So if it's a show for me where I'm the one who's creating the band and I'm like, recruiting a bassist, a guitarist, a piano player, etc., then at that point I know that it's on me to tell people what I want and to be a little bit more forceful than I normally would be if it was a different situation. And what I mean by forceful is it's on me to drive to a degree, because the show is about me in some ways. Um, if I'm playing in somebody else's band, it's my job to know when to step back unless they explicitly want me to step up. Meaning it's their job, because the show is about them, to make the executive decisions, the creative choices, to kind of give the feedback and lead the group. In that role, I'm more of a backup, like a backup sort of, fighter. So, um, know who's leading and know when to step up and know when to step back, I think is the advice I'm giving there when you're thinking about how involved you want to get, in any project.
I kind of want to move on to talking a little bit more about your Twitch performances, and how as a musician, right? Like you got started, and like what was the impetus for wanting to perform on Twitch as a musician?
There were two main like sort of friend groups that really convinced me to start doing stuff on Twitch. Um, a big friend, a big. Let me get my words together really quick. Um, yeah, in 2018, I lost my job. I got laid off from a startup, and I had a couple months to kind of figure out what I want to do, and figure out, like, at the time I was in customer support, like IT, and like kind of on that ladder, and I didn't feel that I wanted to like continuing becoming like, oh, the lead of operations, right, as the giant Hokage position right at the end of the tunnel. um I what's it called, my friend Charlie, who is pretty active in like being a Twitch viewer and just knowing what the scene is about, and what's it called, knowing what I do with freestyle rap at like local events. He brought up the idea to me and said, there aren't that many freestyle rappers on Twitch right now. Like there are some, but definitely something that you can try doing, and like you should, yeah, play guitar and do all these things, and like you won't have to have the limitations of like a place or a time to do what you do. and have people like get amazed by it, right? And for me, I said, yeah, okay. So we tried it out, or he helped me get it set up. Like, shout out to him. He was a huge part of my starting my journey on Twitch. It wasn't until about maybe March of 2019, so maybe like 6 months after that initial conversation, that I started taking it seriously, where I kind of would try to stream here and there, but it wouldn't be consistent. And then, he would kind of rally me up like, dude, you're not even giving it a chance. Like, you have to try going hard at this and stuff. And I think that convinced me.
Let me stop you right there and just ask, like, what was the first kind of content when you were sharing or streaming when you were kind of just dabbling in Twitch?
The first content that I chose was really strictly freestyle rap. It was, I think, having my camera on, like a small webcam, um, Yeti microphone. What's it called? I didn't have a mixer at the time, so I just played beats off of my, laptop or phone or whatever, and hoped that the mic would pick it up. And I would just rap about anything that somebody walking in was talking about, or and the times where I was by myself, there weren't as many viewers. I would, what's it called, have a word generator on the screen. I would put a word generator on the screen saying like bamboozled, and then I would rap about that word until the next word popped up, right? And yeah, it was literally just that for like weeks.
Got it. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just really wanted to better understand like that first piece of content that you were posting on there, and the reason why your friend Charlie had said like, "Hey, you're not really giving it a chance," and it kind of was wondering if you can explain that a little bit more in terms of when he was saying you're not really giving, the basically it almost sounds like he's saying like you're not doing Twitch properly in a sense, or like in the best way possible that utilizes your skill set and talent.
It was an idea of how to use Twitch properly, and also it was a commentary on me possibly committing to something, for the first time in a long time. Um, in a situation where the rewards don't immediately show themselves. One thing you'll learn about folks with ADHD is that they have a dopamine deficiency, meaning that there is a high chance that at any given point they need some form of instant gratification, some form of rush to kind of be in normal levels of, emotion that neurotypical people feel. And in that sense, because of that, a lot of things in my life are commitments to me until they aren't fun anymore. Like, oh, I liked learning how to play let's say I learned how to play the flute. Shoot, I reached a skill ceiling where like this part's really, really hard. I quit. I'm playing Dark Souls 2. Damn it, that boss is unbeatable. I quit. You know, this relationship, like, oh, like, blah, 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 blah. Like, Twitch was the first time in 2018 where I think I had like a friend who like knew me well enough and I trusted them enough to convince me like you need to give this like at least a year to 2 years of you consistently grinding and like showing up even on days where there is no dopamine and there's are days where you don't get rewarded for the work you put in. And I think that really kind of changed the path I was on because I respected his advice, and I really gave it a shot with a set schedule, and there were some positive things that came out of that for sure.
Talk to me a little bit about going on that path, right? Like being, because I remember you were saying that you're kind of someone that didn't necessarily have like a set schedule that kind of lets things kind of come to them, like almost like when they feel like it's more just like those momentary things. But now that you're pushing yourself to do something that is more regimented, like what were those emotions like talk to me about like how maybe it was challenging in the outset, right, to be on a schedule and to show up, right, like every single day for a set period of time during the first year or so. Like just talk to me about the range of emotions that you felt and experienced.
I think the first year I definitely would stream 2 days a week, and it eventually evolved into every Saturday and every Tuesday, no matter what. Try your best to do it, right? And if not, do 2 days in general. And I think that really worked because I was able to, I think, build it was scalable. I was able to build a schedule around it, my day job schedule, my, local gigs schedule. I think the fact that I gave myself a small goal of like 2 days a week and then, it can vary. It really helped. It really helped me kind of get through those moments where I was like, dang it, this feels like work. And I don't get, and I don't get like a cookie or whatever at the end of it sometimes. Like, right. Um, Things that really helped in that first year were also, I think, doing a lot of collaborations with people, as in on the days where I didn't know what to do, I would invite some like friends from the local music scene to come through and play music with me, right? Where I eventually switched, by the way, from freestyling to freestyling and doing acoustic guitar, like both as options, meaning I was playing Green Day covers for people or like, stuff like that.
Any particular reason for that switch?
In the early days when you're just new, and you're showing up like as like a broadcast, people are really trying to feel out, who you are. And they're trying to feel out if this is a place that they can hang out or if you're somebody that they like really or that, they can hang out with because ultimately spending time in the Twitch stream is hanging out. It's a beautiful thing. Um with the freestyling, the hard part is that if I'm constantly rapping, I can't have conversations as much. I can, of course, freestyle rap conversations, but I think there needs to be a healthy level of downtime along with uptime in this medium. Unlike a music video, the viewer is seeing every aspect of your life in the hours that you're streaming, pretty much, like whatever's on camera. So the ability to play guitar or to like look up lyrics and to try to figure out a song, I think it builds a healthy level of downtime for me to kind of joke with them like, oh, that chord, it sounds hella goofy, or that reminds me of this other song, like, and it gives room. So it's that, and then it's also just me expanding my skill set, showing people what else I can do, because you know, um, content content is fun, or people go to Twitch for fun, and you can do different things.
When you're managing, a digital crowd versus a live performance crowd, right? What are the similarities and differences that you kind of see? And, is there any mental shifts like that, you need to make?
Very, very funny question. Because two weeks ago, I referred to a crowd in like a local venue as chat, which I would say that's the first thing I want to say is that and people laughed because I think people got it. Like some people, they know, what streaming online is like. So in the footage, they were like, haha, twat, chat. He called us chat.
Do you remember exactly what you said? Right? Like what was the line that you said to the crowd?
Like I beatboxed and then I freestyled, for a little bit about the venue. And then I said, yo, what's up, guys? I'm Chris Songco. I like to rap. And, you can throw words at me out there, like whatever words you want to put into the chat, or I meant to say like the ether, like in terms of the space, like say it out loud. And I think some people laughed, when they heard that because, there is no chat. There is no chat in a venue. Like the chatting is happening outside. Like you can hear them in real time, which is funny.
Yeah. It could have been a joke, right? Like throw it in the chat, right? Like as a not actually taking you seriously as like throw it into the chat. It's more like seemed like it could be played off as like a musical verse.
Oh yeah, like just like throw it in the conversation, right? Yeah, like totally, totally. But yeah, I would say that's my funny like answer because it definitely happened. The big things I think to understand between live performance on Twitch versus in person is I think the idea of silence is different between the two. Just because people are silent in your Twitch chat or they're not posting a bunch of emotes or kind of writing all the time doesn't mean that they're not there. It doesn't mean that you're doing bad. or that you're not doing like stellar work or things. And it also doesn't necessarily mean that like, um you're alone, I guess, because there are times where, as a streamer, if nobody's talking, it can feel like low energy, right? However, the beauty of Twitch is that, unlike a real music venue, it's low maintenance. It's lower maintenance, meaning somebody could be listening and enjoying your content while they're working on a very complicated spreadsheet. But the joy that they're getting from your work is still there. They just aren't conveying it. Or somebody's maybe a little bit more soft spoken or like introverted and they don't know what to say if they wanted to participate. They just know they like being here. I think Twitch gives them an opportunity to enjoy you at the comfort level that they want for their person. In an in-person venue, like an in-person show, you don't have that as much. Like we all see situations where you're sitting in the front of a comedy show and somebody, like the comedian goes up, like you're in the line of fire. We're gonna talk about you, and you're like, dang, I didn't want this. Like, I would say that's something that Twitch has, which is really refreshing. That being said, I think enthusiasm shows itself differently, which is something that I've learned. Where in a live crowd, when they laugh, you can hear the laugh. When they cheer, you can hear the cheer. When they heckle, you can hear the heckle. Whereas Twitch, everything is all typed, meaning it sounds like you're talking to yourself. It's kind of kooky, but you are actually talking to people. It's just flowing like this versus in here.
We were talking about earlier, like reading the room, physically, like when you're doing a live performance or show, you feel the energy. Like, how do you feel out that energy in a Twitch session? Because I imagine every session brings its own energy. And like in the short time that I tested out streaming games on Twitch, every session was different, right? Some days it would be like there's people that are really active. Some days it's literally just me, streaming a game, and maybe there's one or two people that are kind of lurking, but you always feel like you have to kind of like entertain if you feel like the energy is low, or like you were mentioning before, the emotes weren't necessarily coming there.
Feeling the room is it's just an ongoing thing that every Twitch streamer navigates, and the rules will always change. Um, and even the rules, like, there aren't like hard rules. I think the closest thing to a hard rule is what you said, where, knowing that you are on camera, which means you are visible, you are seen, you are not fully, even though you're in your home, you are not like living as a person. You are living as like a little closer to like a TV show, right? And I would say that would be a big thing. I think reading the room also, I think, is you showing up so that you can, as you see people coming in who start to be regulars, you start to get to know each other, as broadcaster and community member. And from there, you can, I think, build to get better gauge of what your community is like as you show up more. But that's also contingent on you showing up enough for like a community to grow, which is where his advice to do it properly and be consistent was really important to me.
I'm curious how we talked about preparation for a live performance. What are some of the things that you do to prepare for your Twitch performances or your Twitch personality? And is it different than the stuff that you would do for a live performance, or is that mentality like similar, or and or different?
Definitely pretty similar. I think, at least from my voice and my sort of, in some ways, my body being an instrument of performance, like, of like, I think, vocal warm ups definitely make me feel more ready to like tackle whatever is coming for the stream. A hard request, a freestyle attempt, anything like that. Um, the difference between this and I think a live show is that for me, a Twitch stream feels a little bit more like a residency, where if you've ever been to like a winery or like a bar where like there's a performer that's being paid to be there, they have a set planned, but there's room for conversation, there's room for commercial breaks, there's room for them to stop and start, like, right? And I think part of setting up a stream is maybe making sure that my technology is good, and that, like, almost, at least in the Twitch world, that folks who are coming at the broadcasted time, they're being met with something, like a waiting room, like a starting soon screen, those things with like some nice music in the background. Those things really help to sort of build up this idea that, like, you know, hey, we're here. We're going to do some fun things today. I'm still, preparing, but the show is starting soon, which I think is different than, I think, like a live venue where maybe you would just vocally tell everybody on the mic, like, hey, we're starting real soon, or like the headliner would say that. um Technology is really important. I think making sure that the camera is working, mixers are working, OBS is playing nice, you have your alerts and your different things that pop up, they're like in the right place. That takes a big part of like the 30 minutes before a stream starts. Is
Got it. So do you have like a checklist that you kind of go through that like you check? I don't know if it's like a document or you just list everything out. It's just like OBS check, mic check, right? Like, is there like the kind of, set checklist that you prepare for yourself?
I should have a checklist. I do not, though. Like, as in, I don't have like an explicit one. I think it would be an amazing thing to have, um, just in general. But for me, I think I've done it long enough. I've been streaming for about, like, I would say almost 4 years, where I think I just know when something is wrong and when I need to, like, address it. Mental checklist would be, is the looper, can the looper loop? As in, can it make the beat that's playing over and over again? Can you hear the guitar? Like the like if I turn this up and I strum my guitar, is it actually connected, right? Um, Camera, my camera is finicky. Like, the hatch that holds the battery sometimes wiggles the battery out. Like, these are things that you just kind of learn. Like, okay, I just got to mentally be like prepared for that.
Yeah, like you said, you probably are already really used to it, and if something goes wrong, I'm assuming you probably have backups or you have contingency plans on stuff, and I'm sure Stream is probably really understanding of like technical difficulties probably happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you see a strong contingency of people or musicians that are performing on Twitch or using Twitch as a way to promote themselves? And like, talk to me a little bit about the why musicians should jump onto Twitch to, uh, grow and use it as a place to practice performances or kind of grow their musical careers.
There's definitely several examples of people who are able to do music on Twitch at a very quote unquote full-time esque level. Um, and then there are a number of musicians who can do it alongside live performance. And then there's some who will mainly just do it on live performances, like, only, and then stream it on Twitch, like stream their live performances on Twitch. Like, those seem to be the three pockets that people fall into. Yeah, I would say I remember mentioning that there were two factors that definitely convinced me to do Twitch. The other factor was my friends Greg and Alicia, who are part of a duo known as the Compliments. Funny thing is, yes, the Compliments. They lived in the Bay Area, and I saw them at like music venues and shows with our mutual friends. And the funny thing is that the four of us actually met in Oregon when we were all in Oregon for the first time. Yeah, and we went on our like Salt and Straw whiz bang bar, like, run, and like the chicken over rice places, like, and those things, like, I think those built positivity where they were a year ahead of me on Twitch, meaning I started in 20, like, I started thinking about 2018. They started thinking about maybe 2017, maybe even earlier. They're an example of a group who has been doing it for a while in like at a professional level, and they got partnered. They're partnered on Twitch, which signifies a certain level of like, dedication and a viewership and just consistency, right? And I think in that regard, they're an example of somebody who they've met several people through the music community, both as collaborators, like in LA and Canada, everywhere, and then also met several people who maybe wanted to hear their music live, like weddings, for events, like fly them out, those types of things. They've built quite a network of, you know, like almost, yeah, live performance opportunities, and I think Twitch only helps that, since they're doing both. Um, Other friends, I think, other friends on Twitch, there are folks who don't do as many performances live, but what they do, on the platform is so effective that they can just run with that like full time. And then, like one of the early folks that I saw early on was the Dapper Rapper, who was like, in my early days of freestyling, he was one of the first partnered people to like raid me. And he does what I did, as well, like fellow freestyler, rapping over beats, talking with chat, and like he was able to, do a lot of dope things off of that, like, get himself situated, upgrade his stuff, like on like a full-time partner ambassador level. So there's options all directions. I really kind of maybe got derailed. I kind of went really deep on that. I think musicians should join Twitch to be able to have the ability to, I think, talk to people outside of their bubble, um, people in different countries, in different time zones. Maybe talk to people that aren't necessarily um, geared for like live performance setting too. I'm talking about my more like my memers, my online folks, right? Who or homebodies for whatever reason, whether it's by choice or by need, right? Like there is a group of wonderful people that you get to meet here that maybe you would not see outside if you were like focusing on just going to these places, right? For yeah. I think that's a great thing. I think building community to not just do music, but to do other things, video games, hangouts, everything like that. And yeah, definitely a great place to practice too, because the nature of it is live over like super fabricated or manufactured. Like if you mess up a song, usually people are forgiving, if not appreciative of the honesty of the space.
Do you see any other kind of creative arts, right? Also on Twitch, whether it's, I don't know, I'm just thinking like comedy or painting, right? Or are these other things where people are using kind of Twitch as a stage, a digital stage, right? And I'm just curious, like what are the other things that you've seen in term other than gaming, how Twitch has been used for the arts and entertainment?
I've seen hoop dancers, make really, really cool like visual experiences where they can actually modify their OBS settings to work with the music, to work with what they're doing with movement and like stuff. It's very cool. I've definitely I haven't seen stand-up comedians do sets like, a formal set on Twitch, but I think a big part of Twitch's charm is comedy, is personality, the idea of like, somebody watching another person play Minecraft. It sometimes is about Minecraft, but a lot of the time it's about the commentary that the gamer is playing while playing Minecraft that gets people, you know, engaged or enchanted. So in some ways that's stand-up comedy in midst of another medium. But I've definitely seen dancers. I've seen cooks. Like I have some chef friends who, cook on streams all the time, and they have like a nice video setup to accommodate that, show everything. People read books, like ASMR type things. Yeah, yeah. A friend, what's it called? Yeah, Pretty Good Gaming was the example of the chefs who, show the kitchen. By the way, I should be plugging the homies. So Pineapple Hoops was the hoop dancer who has like a cool setup. What's called Pretty Good Gaming. They're the chefs who are cooking stuff and have a camera so you can see it getting chopped in real time. And then Abe Music, he did like he did like a ASMR reading of like Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, for anybody who just wanted to like relive that, right, in like an audiobook way. So you can get really creative. You can definitely do a lot of stuff, and people can find interest in it.
Do you have any challenges performing on Twitch?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think this will vary from individual to individual, but some performers are energy based. And what I mean by that is that they respond to applause or booing or silence, more so than others. And I think one difficulty of the space is the fact that you already can't hear and see and feel other people's reception to you, like from like a senses standpoint. Like if you were playing at like a venue, you could feel those things, right? Like once you finish a song, people clapping. Twitch is, in that sense, I think, just a different stage where if you are in a lighter night and nobody claps after you finish a song, like it could like negatively affect you, It could make you feel like, oh damn, I put a lot of work into, figuring that out or rehearsing it, performing it, and then if there's no reaction, it's kind of like, did anybody hear it? That's where the head can go. And I feel a lot of streamers can feel that way, especially if like you you put a lot of work into what you're doing, right?
Right. And guess you mentioned, like, for example, feeling potentially, slightly dejected, right? Or if, something doesn't hit, or if it's like the energy is off, in a Twitch stream. Talk to me a little bit more about how you cope with maybe a Twitch session that didn't necessarily go as well, or maybe you have a string of Twitch sessions where it kind of throws you into a funk, and like emotionally and spiritually and mentally, like how do you recover from that? How do you get back on into the next Twitch session and be like, okay, I'm going to make a mental change. I'm going to get out of this particular Twitch session rut that maybe you've been going through.
I think the funks they will always be different each time. Maybe there are some that feel very similar or are triggered by the same things, but for me, I think if I notice myself getting into a funk, or several funks with like streams or whatnot, I think I personally will go into like a reflection period on what do I need right now, and if the answer to that is something that is not within my control, like I need 20, I need 100 people watching me all the time. Like if that's the answer that pops up, then at that point I have to I think revisit the goals of going live, right? Because some people want to do it to just get big, get rich or die trying, sort of, so to speak. But the fact of the matter is, there needs to be more than extrinsic reward that drives you to go live. And I think if you don't feel that there's reasons that are like within yourself to go live, then maybe it's time to take a break, honestly. And that's where I would take a break. I would, maybe take a week off or like inform the community like, hey, I'm going, I need some like personal days or whatnot, and go do other things like the other pillars that make a human happy, like meeting up with friends, doing non-online things, or playing music, but with the goal of exploration. Like whatever it is for you, whatever works for you, exercise, I'm not sure. But like ultimately, I personally would say if it's the funk that continues, then maybe take a break. And then when you come back, you'll be revitalized. You'll be in a space where you might miss it a little bit more, or maybe they'll miss you a little bit more. Like if you've been streaming like way too much, for way too long, like I think it's healthy distance can really help, from time to time.
It just sounds like there's a real importance to balance your stage performance life and your personal life, right? And like creating boundaries sort of between the two. And, some of them can probably intertwine and intersect in some way or form, but, eventually at some point in time, having that separation sounds like it's really important for your mental and emotional sanity when just managing negative emotions or just emotional tiredness, because I'm sure after every Twitch session, whether good or bad, there's an emotional toll that you've put forth. And maybe you have a set time in terms of like, I only perform for talk or perform for 3 hours and that's it. Or it's like, hey, I'm going to continue to go on with this particular stream, and you exert a lot of energy. So it sounds like that decompression time is also really, really important.
Yeah, decompression. I think just the idea of being balanced, right? Like, you put all your eggs into the basket of like whether people react to you with cat jam or not, and all the eggs are in this basket, and then you don't get your desired outcome, then you know all the eggs get rotten. Whereas if you spend some time to put those eggs in other places, then it's a little bit more balanced. I think the other thing too is also in some ways negotiating with yourself. Like, um, the concept of consistency was really with the idea, like in terms of consistent schedule and being disciplined, was with the idea of growing to like partner or growing, exponentially or what have you, like doing what doing that mission. I think that for every streamer, it can be different. Where like if you do take more breaks than not, then that might be, counterproductive to the partner goal, for instance, because you're not as online and someone else is. Someone else is doing the thing, right? There's a competitive aspect to this world we live in. That being said, if your goal is to, continue to grow as a person or to, explore things, but it doesn't necessarily have to be as like sharp pointed as that first one I said, then you can give yourself permission to end a stream early, right? Like I'm not feeling it anymore, or like, I need to take a rest or what have you. Like, and from there it's a negotiation. Like you take what good and bad, like you choose to take, basically. Like you want to grow, you push a little bit harder. You push, you want to live, you want to thrive, you want to, have a balance, you know, you pull back a tiny bit, and there's consequences to both sides, but it's okay, we'll all be all right. you know
Yeah, that makes sense. I was reading a book a while back. I forgot what it was called, and I'll have to look it up again. But the author was talking about, different points in life, especially from a work career perspective. People want different things, right? Let's say, for example, you want to grow in your career, you want to get promoted, you want to advance, right? And you know just focus totally on work, right? Like that is one phase of your life. But it's also okay, let's say for example, if you want to be more of a parent, right? You want to focus on being there for your kid, or less on career and just more like, I would just say in this case, like life work balance, right? With maybe more of an emphasis on life than work. And that it's okay to totally go back and switch between the two. Like maybe you're okay with slower career progression in exchange for more time with family or other pursuits, side hobbies or whatever. And then if you want to switch back to focusing on career growth or whatever, that's totally fine too. And everyone approaches life in a different stage, and everyone's path is a little bit different in terms of like the things that they want to focus on. So that's something that your comment really resonated with me in terms of thinking about balancing Twitch and decompression and what you want to focus on. And that's okay to pause, right? Being a streamer for a little bit and then come back on when you're ready, or you feel that you're in the right space to want to have a purpose for streaming and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like a big stigma that I think doesn't have like weight to stand on when you like look at it closely is the idea that if you were to take a long break from streaming or a long break from releasing music or videos or whatever your art is, there's often like maybe a big stigma from the general community that like you're no longer a musician or a video maker or streamer or artist, right? Like you quit, right? And there's like a lot of judgment in that statement, right? And I think it's easy to get caught in that judgment, but the big importance is, I think, purpose. It's the idea of like when you're doing this thing, are you doing it for reasons that, you know, are true for you and good for your person, right? Versus doing it to for somebody else, or you know, I think you taking breaks in some ways is giving future you an alley oop to maybe slam dunk something when it really feels right. You know, that's what I want to believe.
In addition to performing music, right? Like you also do tarot card reading and, playing different games and, even like I mentioned before, Yu-Gi-Oh card unboxings and stuff like that. Like what made you decide to add those elements, right, to your Twitch stream performances?
Yeah, it goes back to what we were saying before, that I think once people have a more established idea of like what you do and like what is something that is kind of like your main Pokemon. You know how like when we play Pokemon like Charmander, Squirtle, Bulbasaur, oftentimes they're the strongest Pokemon on our team. Like for me, my strongest Pokemon was like freestyling and music for a long time. I think at a certain point, you know, once people understand that that's something within me, then it gives you an opportunity to still give them that, but also to show them a little bit more. So around like mid 2019, I was gifted a tarot deck by a friend, and they taught me how to do tarot, and it was a cool thing to add on because um, it opened up deep human discussion on struggles, on problems that not only the person who's getting read for can relate to. Me as the reader can relate to the things we talk about. Other people lurking in the chat can relate to things we talk about. In that sense, it almost becomes like a area of effect conversation that could help people, you know, connect and get through the troubles of their life. You know, that's why I added tarot specifically, is for those conversations and also to continue my craft of just learning the cards and reading them, being a good listener too. Um, I think adding the video games, I think was really coming from the standpoint that as a kid, I grew up playing video games for fun, but non-committally, and Twitch is known for video games, so it's almost an opportunity for me to, I think, play games again, you know, and that's also another area to connect with people on, whether it's a party game or it's like a super deep single player game that people really resonate with, right? Like Sonic Adventure 2 was a game I played in 2021. Some of my favorite streams just off of the music, off of the memeableness of the game, and I think a lot of people felt that energy. They felt me laughing when like the joke thing happened or when I was rocking out, and that just helps build more moments, you know, that you can share with people. So adding games, dope. And then Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a hobby that I repicked up last year because I was really depressed at the beginning of the year that I had no hobbies. So I took a break and I said, hey, let's collect cards again, just for the sake of cards and stuff like that, and like, you know, learning something and nerding out. So sharing that with my community is just, it was, you know, another way to just be like, hey, here's another thing that we can vibe on.
Those elements showcase different parts of your personality aside from the musical piece, because you were talking about how the music is deep, creating music and expressing it is deeply personal, and I'm curious how all these other elements, these things that you've added to your performances, showcase maybe your emotions, your thoughts in a way that maybe your music doesn't convey, or adds a different element that's complementary.
I think they just immensely help because they're often like really different. They're different parts of like my personality. One thing I can say is that I am somebody who can get bored easily. Meaning, you know, if I do music streams 4 or 5 days straight, on the fourth or fifth day, it's just not going to feel as amazing as maybe the first one did, right? And if I allow myself to do other things, then it also gives myself permission to show people, my other, like what I can do, or to show people my, how I convey value in wearing a different hat. Like, so for music, I'm using my ears to figure out a song, and I'm rapping and filling up the space with content that's about the song, about me, about my content, and like people are consuming it. We're talking, but a lot of it is me just doing stuff and trying to wow people, right? Um, in tarot, I have to wear the hat of being a good listener, as in for the discussion to continue to flow in a meaningful way. I have to hear the other person and hear what they're going through and react to it in an appropriate way. Draw a card. I know the card. I can talk about the card that I draw for them, but ultimately, good listening will help us come to a conclusion about the reading, which I think in that sense, it's more of a sensitive, very like intimate space with tarot, which is different than the party atmosphere of the music. Um, the Yu-Gi-Oh and the video game thing, I think, is where I can either allow myself to be competitive or to be a little bit childish, which is something that the previous two I don't do as much. There's childish moments in music, but a lot of the time it's really more so like executing something really well. But whereas in gaming and Yu-Gi-Oh, I could play stupid cards in the video game or like draw a card and be like, "Oh my god, Starlight Rare." And it's a completely different energy. It's like a consumer energy. It's an energy that's like, "Oh damn, like this kid got super happy about this card popping up, right?" or whatever. And if I'm playing Jackbox with my community like in a video game, I'm able to be like, "Fuck, I can't believe you won off like by 10 points." And like this could happen, that this can be said, to anybody in chat, right? Like, yo, you're from the UK. Dang it. Like, what's in your guys' water? How how did you draw how did you draw and win that game? Like it's more human. It builds the humanity, I think, of like, you know, our relationships a bit more.
I think what I love about your reflection on those pieces is that one, it not only showcases different parts of your personality, but I think you get to be more human with your audience, and also just kind of show more of an authentic self, right? Like I'm guessing with like the musical performances, like you are being personal and expressive, somewhat pre-planned or impromptu, right? But in a more uh, performative way, whereas this is more kind of reactionary things, or you have more time to think. Like it's less of a planned set per se, and I think people get to probably see that side of you versus like the musical set. It's personal, but there's also times I'm sure when you're improving, it's like how well do you masterfully execute this line that makes it sound funny or entertaining.
When I'm performing music, it's really kind of almost like a Rubik's Cube challenge to both myself and to the community to continue the music jam. Basically, I'm Songco Jam on Twitch. We're jamming. And what the jam means is that it doesn't necessarily stop when the song finishes. There's a ton of things we can mash up into the song. There's ways we could play with a part of the lyrics that can make it go a totally different direction. And I'm not thinking so much about who I am as a human or who my chat is as a humans in those moments so much as I'm thinking about ideas. Like the chord progression of Bruno Mars' Grenade can actually mash up really well with Rolling in the Deep by Adele, or with, a random song from like like hip hop, like T.I. or what have you. And the beauty of that is that I'm in that zone. And I think my chat sees that and they can throw out stuff of their own that they think can fit, which actually in some ways it's very much it's it's simultaneously a proactive and reactive exercise where I'm constantly thinking of new things to expand on this song mashup, and I'm reacting to what they're saying which could lead to even more discoveries. And I think that's really fun, where they say something that works really well. I go, holy crap, that does. And then we all win.
I kind of want to wind down our session a little bit and, just ask, what are, I guess, your goals with music and performing? Like, what is the end goal? Is it something that you would love to do full time? Like, would you love to like be a Twitch partner or like, perform around different shows and perform for a living? Is that something that you aspire to do? Or, do you currently right now just like kind of enjoy it as a side hobby and, you want to keep maybe your day job or the flexibility of not necessarily being committed full time to the music or the performance aspect of it?
Music fits in my life, I think, right now in a very, I would say, more so like emotional, sacred place than maybe, I think, clear cut space. And what I mean by that is that like my goal right now is like happiness at this point in my life, in which case that's a very deep goal, but it is coming from the standpoint of, living meaningful experiences, creating meaningful things that ideally will have impact on those I care about, the world at large, and also myself. Meaning, I think right now, like, there isn't necessarily a like clear path of like I absolutely need to play Coachella or I absolutely need to sell 1 million records, right? Or even you mentioning Twitch partner, like if the option to become Twitch partner presented itself in terms of like certain steps in that Twitch path that feel right, then of course I'm going to lean into those steps, take a risk, ride the wave. That being said, I think right now where I'm at with music is definitely expanding my creativity as a goal, as in continuing to create good content that I value. Um, Part of that is creating content that people see, and definitely trying to build upon my fan base and build upon the folks who are in my corner, who vibe with what I'm about. Um, but ultimately, I think the true goal is creativity at the moment. Meaning I'm focusing on making new songs, making new streams, making new content, art, poems, everything, and continuing to release it so that people can see it. We can open discussions. A big part of life for me right now is also experiencing new things. So I picked up Yu-Gi-Oh last year. This year I'm picking up Jiu-Jitsu. Just different things for me to, I think, expand on what I can write about, and also um, going back to what we said before, I think building 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 happiness as a person overall. There was a time in my life where I think definitely I felt it was absolutely partner or bust, or like gigs every single day of every week or bust. Um, and that is a amazing high when you're like an amazing boost of energy when you're in momentum, but there is also room for your mental health to be volatile when things aren't as good. So for me right now, the goal is to continue to create, to continue to keep aiming to go upward towards like the Coachella performances and the partner status and everything like that, but also keep in mind that happiness is important, mental health is important, which can show itself in different ways. Other goals, being able to win a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament, being able to own a cat and everything like that. Write songs about the cat. You never know. But that's my very deep, long-winded answer to goals.
I mean, it just sounds like, when you prioritize life first, right, especially in a creative field, the other things will follow. Like at some point in time, to build those experiences, to build the things that you want to be able to write about, right? And ultimately those things will manifest itself with more color in your artistic work.
if you're acting from a place of truth, like as in it feels right to do this or it doesn't feel right to do this. I think it's often in those immediate times where you feel resistance. Like, oh, are you sure? You sure you want not do that? Are you sure you want to say that or whatever? But the fact of the matter is, it's like we really don't know where this life thing is going to go. So keep riding the wave and choosing to ride waves that feel right. Something you said really resonated with me, which is the do like follow what you want to follow and then the rest will follow. I guess, like, if you're focusing on life rather than on like some specific desired outcome, then the rest will follow, and it could look different from the outcome you were thinking. Or it could be the exact one, but it was meant to be. It was meant to go the way it goes.
All great advice. Chris, I want to thank you for coming on to this pod. Really appreciate the knowledge and insight, and I think the humanity that you brought in terms of your music and the way that you approach like community building and as well as like expressing yourself. I do want to ask, where people can find you, whether it's on social media, any venues that you frequent or perform at. Just want to get people to be aware of your presence and where they can, find your music and performances.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me twitch.tv/Songco Jam, SONGCOJAM. I usually stream there 2 to 3 times a week. Usually music on Saturdays, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, a 2 days between those days. It'll be what's it called, tarot reading or gaming. It's kind of whatever we feel. Usually late night. So if you do visit twitch.tv/SoncoJam, you'll know that it realistically will be closer to like 10 p.m. PST onward, wherever you are. Instagram.com/Chris Songco Music. That's where you can also find updates for both Twitch and live shows. I do actually have my first live show in a while next Thursday, April 13th, at the Waypost, which is a venue in Northeast Portland, rather, in Oregon. So if you're in the area, feel free to say what's up. Then again, this video might come out after that, so take it with what you will. So yeah, there's the IG, youtube.com/Chris Songco. You'll find me there. I have videos and stuff, so those are the main areas. But yeah, I would love to see you.
Cool. Well, Chris, I want to thank you for coming on, and hopefully you have the rest of a good night.
Thank you, man. Thanks for the conversation, and yeah, shout out to everyone watching the pod. Have a good night as well.